With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halverson.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning on the AgNet News Hour. Coming up later, we hear from an American Olympic breakdancer who's now promoting a popular food. We'll have more on that coming up. But to start today, a branch of the Agriculture Department offers key statistical information that studies trends in both farm and consumer economics. Rod Bain reports.
Makes sense that the Agriculture Department puts out regular forecasts for farm income, right? Their last report in September made news with its projections.
After adjusting for inflation, the net farm income forecast is to decrease in 2024.
Yet, as USDA Economic Research Service Administrator Spiro Stefano recently pointed out at the AgriPulse Agricultural Outlook Forum in Kansas City, reports on economic data, forecast, and trends go well beyond farming and ranching. In several cases, they also apply to consumer and population categories, from nutrition to rural demographics. An example is ERS's annual report, Household Food Security in the U.S.
One of the world leaders tracking food insecurity at household levels, and it's a pretty important activity, I think, on our part.
ERS also tracks food security trends on an international level.
International Food Security Assessment. We do this forecast and we project it out 10 years. We find here that food insecurity is internationally expected to decrease over time.
A highlight ERS report every November is the Rural America at a Glance series.
This report looks at changes in the economic sector, labor force, growth in rural areas.
ERS also conducts and releases regular studies on subjects such as food economics.
Food economics, we have diet, safety, and health considerations. We do food assistance. We also look at the broader food marketing background,
including the monthly food price inflation forecast.
Food price inflation has been a very hot topic for us lately. Crop disease, some work on pollinators.
And coverage of many more diverse categories by ERS as part of its mission area. Administrator Stefano notes the significance of ERS data products by way of the significance of the Economic Research Service itself.
We are also one of the 13 principal federal statistical agencies, along with the Bureau of Census, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Bureau of Economic Analysis, and this is a pretty high bar for us to clear. Our job is to provide objective, trusted statistics. We want to acquire quality data. Quality data lead to good statistics, which can lead to good policy.
The multitude of ERS data products, reports, and surveys can be found online at www.ers.usda.gov. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Dairy operators are seeing strong demand for their milk and getting higher prices. Gary Crawford has more.
One economist says you can pretty much sum up the current dairy situation this way.
Relatively tight U.S. supplies and strong demand.
Although USDA Outlook Board Chairman Mark Jekanowski says you could add the word very to those words, so very tight supplies, very strong demand. The nation's dairies are churning out more milk, not as much, though, as had been expected, and not as much as the market would probably like to see.
We're looking at a situation where heifer supplies are relatively tight, so cow inventories are lower than we'd probably like to see them. Milk per cow is also lower than we'd expect as well, so that's tightening up supplies.
And, of course, raising prices that producers are getting for their milk.
For 2024, we're forecasting an all-milk price of $23.05 per hundredweight. That was raised 75 cents per hundredweight this month.
And would be the highest average price in a couple of years. And, Mark says,
for next year, for 2025, our all-milk price is forecast at $23.45 per hundredweight. So that would be up 40 cents per hundredweight year over year. And that was raised 70 cents per hundredweight this month.
But not only are dairy operators getting higher prices for their milk,
margins are pretty strong as well, given the relatively lower feed prices that the livestock sector is looking at this year relative to where we were last year and in recent previous years.
But even with these higher milk and dairy product prices, consumer demand is also higher and shows no signs of letting up.
So this month, all of our product price forecasts were increased for both 2024 and 2025. Cheese, butter, non-fat dry milk, dry whey, all showing recent strength.
So all in all, a pretty good situation right now for dairy operators. Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. In today's National Spotlight, you've been hearing a lot lately about AI, or artificial intelligence, and how that technology can be used to advance the ag industry. That's why a new ag company that's based in Indiana called TerraForce is already using AI to harvest watermelons and pumpkins. Here's CJ Miller with more.
Without AI, this wouldn't really be possible.
And that's Mike Jacob, the founder of TerraForce. His company has developed a robotic harvester that uses AI to identify whether watermelons and pumpkins are ripe and ready for harvesting. Then the AI technology is used to carefully pick the fruits with very little human oversight.
We're solving farmers' most severe problem in melon production, and that's labor. Labor's hard to get, labor's expensive, and it was the conversations with growers before this company even existed that really brought it into existence and got it off the ground.
Jacob says the robotic AI harvesters can also be used for more than just harvesting.
The other cool thing we can do with the machine in its current configuration is we can conceivably plant out the live plants at the beginning of the season. Right now that's pretty labor intensive, it's done by hand, but we can use these same robotic arms with different end effectors to grasp the plant and plant it into the ground.
And without the embedded cost of having to use large farm labor teams, Jacob says that TerraForce could have a significant impact on the U.S. watermelon and pumpkin industries.
One of the things it's going to do is it's going to make U.S. fruit more competitive with import fruit. If you look at the import trends for melons over the past 10, 20 years, all the growth has been captured by imports. Domestic production is flat to slightly down. That's because we couldn't compete on price until now.
He adds that his company is also using AI to develop harvesters for other specialty crops such as tomatoes, lettuce, and cucumbers.
Some of the recent developments that have enabled this are the use of deployable AI, edge AI, that we can have out in the field without an internet connection, determining what's a watermelon, what's not a watermelon, what's ripe, what's not ripe, and how should the robot travel to get to the melon and get it back up into the machine.
Read more about TerraForce by visiting their website, TerraForce.ai. I'm CJ Miller.
Reading, writing, and ranching. Another year is well underway at the South Carolina Governor's School for Agriculture. It's the nation's only residential honors high school devoted entirely to ag. Mike Davis has more.
Ty Morton is the student body president from nearby McCormick. He says at the Governor's School, you never know what to expect.
Working in the greenhouse where you got the hort classes and out there on the farm with the cows and the goats and the pigs, building fence. I mean, it's every day, it's something new. It's never, you wake up every day, you're always doing something new. You never know what you're going to be doing in class that day. One day you might be sitting in classwork, learning about anatomy. The next day you might be outside chasing cows down the road. You just never know.
For example, Caitlin Rhodes teaches Intro to Horticulture and Advanced Greenhouse and Landscape Technology, but next semester it'll be turf grass management and floriculture.
We get to dive into different areas and different parts of the horticulture industry as a whole, and I think that's a good representation of how we can diversify each of our programs and diversify each of our kids. They get a well-rounded education not only in the greenhouse, but we get a well-diversified education in landscaping and in floral design and in marketing and communication and working on those career skills that they'll need as well.
Rhodes has several students experimenting with hydroponics. Braden Morris is in her first year at the school. She comes from urban West Columbia, South Carolina, with little prior ag experience, but she's now growing tomato plants.
I am going to test each variable of hydroponics, such as changing the pH levels, adding nutrients, how often I change the water, to see which tomato grows the most fruit, the heaviest fruit, the tallest, and just what produces the best.
The classes build a foundational knowledge in a broad range of ag, something Senior Bella Tench is grateful for.
If you didn't have any ag background, I feel like these teachers and these people here will introduce you to the ag background. We have horses, goats, cows, we have everything here. We have the horticulture side of everything if they want to get into that side of it. So it's like it introduces you to everything, and that's the really great thing about coming here. If you don't have that ag background, you can get that background coming here.
Students may be the best salesman the school has.
I feel like this is probably the best experience for a farm kid, and kids not even off the farm. I mean, it's a good experience for you to get out there and get to know different people. I've met so many people through this school. I mean, it's crazy. Like, I wouldn't trade it for nothing in the world.
Applications are open now. Search South Carolina Governor's School for Agriculture for more information. I'm Mike Davis.
That's today's National Spotlight. Now here's John Hareth with the Livestock Report.
Colombia has lifted restrictions on imports of U.S. beef related to highly pathogenic avian influenza in dairy cattle. As U.S. Meat Export Federation President and CEO Dan Hallstrom explains, Colombia had placed a ban on beef from 13 affected states.
In April of 2024, we started experiencing some access challenges related to the H5N1 issue, and we were up to 13 states that were not allowed to export to Colombia. So what has happened is that we were averaging about $3 million a month in exports, and once we got through April and into these restrictions, we're down to less than $1 million a month. So obviously a very adverse impact there.
The reopening comes following months of work by U.S. officials.
Needless to say, we're extremely happy and appreciative to USDA and USTR for their efforts to regain access for U.S. beef into Colombia. The reality is that science was on our side, and ultimately that prevailed. And it wasn't easy, but this is the kudos to our government for staying with it and getting us back in with full access to Colombia on beef.
Sourcing U.S. beef from eligible states became difficult when Colombia's restrictions were in place. Now there is work to be done to regain market share. For the U.S. Meat Export Federation, I'm John Hareth.
This is the AgNet News Hour. We will be back in just a moment with more agriculture news. You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halverson. The American Egg Board recently announced the launch of Meant to be Broken, a marketing campaign that challenges consumers to rethink eggs and their everyday lives by inspiring them to be bold and break something, an expectation, a routine, and of course, an egg, to unlock new possibilities. Rusty Halverson has the story.
For starters, the American Egg Board took advantage of the renewed interest in breakdancing this summer by partnering with professional breaker Sunny Choi, who made history as the first U.S. woman invited to compete in the global sport of breaking this summer, and whose own story personifies the campaign's message. She had dreams of being a gymnast as a young girl, but eventually found a new way to achieve her Olympic dreams. I visited with Sunny to learn more about her story and her partnership with the Incredible Egg.
Yeah, just like you said, I grew up as a gymnast with my sights set on the Olympics. And that didn't work out because I had a couple of injuries along the way. So I kind of thought that I was just going to be pursuing a pretty traditional path after that. So I went to college at Penn in Philly, which is actually where I stumbled into breaking. But then I graduated. I was working in corporate. I kind of bumped around, and then, my last workplace was at Estee Lauder on their global creative operations team. And so when they announced that breaking was going to be in the Olympics again, I kind of said, why not? How many times do you get a second chance at fulfilling your childhood dreams? So I decided to quit my job and pursue breaking full time. And I ended up at the Games, and, just really grateful that this journey ended up this way. And obviously really lucky to have partnered with such great organizations like the Incredible Egg, and had such a great support team along the way.
Now, how did this partnership with the Incredible Egg come about? What message are you spreading, and how are you spreading it, Sunny?
So this initiative, Meant to be Broken, for me just spoke so closely and resonated so well with the way that my journey to the Olympics unfolded. The mission is really about meant to be broken, breaking the mold, breaking expectation, breaking a couple eggs, and doing something a little unexpected. And that was, me quitting my corporate job to pursue dance full time. And so, that partnership is really great in that way. And then not to mention, I really love eggs. My love for eggs knows no bounds. And I eat them all the time just because they're such a great source of high quality protein. For me, it's just a match made in heaven, and I'm lucky to have them as a partner.
That's great. When you're in Paris, Sunny, here in the States, we had seen some news reports about the food at the Olympics in Paris, and there is some reports of food shortages and a lack of animal protein at the Olympic Village. Understandable. They had about 2 million meals they had to serve to athletes from 206 nations. But in your experience in Paris, Sunny, did you get enough to eat? Did you have enough to eat the things that you liked when you were over there?
I had more than enough to eat. However, my experience was a little bit different. We did have some complications on our team, so we didn't move on to the village. However, Team USA has a high performance center, and they actually fly in their chefs from the Colorado Springs Training Center. So I'm very familiar with them. And I, to be honest, I would walk in the mornings and be like, oh, Sunny's here, go grab some eggs. And they would always have some eggs for me ready, fresh. And so I was always really well taken care of and always had enough protein to keep me fueled as I was training for the game.
Oh, that's great. Now, with this partnership that you have with the Incredible Egg, are you trying to spread the word about any of your favorites, any snacks or any recipes that you want to share with folks that make you really happy at home?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before the games, it was all about quick meals. But to be honest, it's not just me that's worried about making something quick and easy, because I think everybody who's working or has kids or anything, it's all about those quick and easy meals that are fulfilling and that have that protein in them. And so, some of my go-tos would be loaded tots. Now I would throw basically whatever toppings I happen to have in the fridge, whether that's cheese or cashew cheese, vegan chorizo. I would throw fried eggs on top of that, some salsa, and that was ready to go quick. I would do pineapple fried rice often. So I would have a pineapple salsa or sometimes cut pineapple. So I would just chop up, there was some rice and veggies, scramble in some eggs, because who doesn't put eggs in their fried rice?
That's right.
Another one is I'd always have a frozen custard in the freezer, because I think it's important to treat yourself also. And that recipe also happens to have eggs in it. So it's got a little bit of protein, which is great because I get to treat myself and take care of myself. But yeah, it was really about making sure, at least my journey was about making sure I was fueling properly. But I think that's important for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've got lots of young folks that look up to you and people that you visit with in your new position as an Olympic athlete. Where do you encourage folks to go for recipes and to learn more about this initiative and your partnership that you've got with the Incredible Egg, Sunny?
So you can go to menttobebroken.org, and there you will find my custard freeze recipe, which is a pretty quick and easy recipe to make a frozen treat you don't even need an ice cream maker for, which is great. And there's also a ton of other recipes featuring the Incredible Egg.
Okay. Now, we're almost at the end of September here. We're into October. We've got the holidays coming up too, Sunny, and holidays, at least to me, mean a lot of baking, and you can't bake a lot of stuff without eggs. So there's another avenue there too. Maybe some of the sweets out there as well.
Absolutely. I have my eyes set on a pumpkin pie recipe. So I have a base, but I definitely always tweak recipes. So we'll be working on that one coming up.
Okay. Now, if folks want to follow you, do you have some social media feeds that you keep up to date, Sunny, to kind of keep up with your adventures?
Yeah, on Instagram, that's probably where I'm most active. You can follow me. It's _Sunny Choi, spelled SUNNYCHOI. And I believe the Incredible Egg also has an Instagram. But yeah, you can follow it anywhere. And I'll be posting as my life journey continues.
Okay, that's great. Do you have any plans as we head into the fall and winter season? What's next on your agenda?
Right now, it's really about kind of refueling, re-energizing, getting my energy back. I poured so much into the Olympic journey that, I was a little tapped out afterwards. So it's about doing things like spending time with my family, spending more time in the kitchen, and prepping for the holidays. And then, getting myself into a place that next year I'm ready to open my own business in Queens, which I hope to be a dance center and community center.
Oh, that's wonderful. And, to get to your level, it takes a lot of training and a lot of practice. Have you been able to get back into your routine? Have you backed off on some of your training a little bit? Where are you at there?
I have backed off a little bit, but I'm still training. Went to the gym in the morning yesterday, went to practice in the evening. And so I've dialed back a bit, but still going at it because I still have a couple competitions coming up this year. And to be honest, I don't foresee not breaking for a little bit. So we're going to keep going.
And again, that is professional breaker Sunny Choi talking about Meant to Be Broken, the new marketing campaign with the American Egg Board. I'm Rusty Halverson.
This segment is brought to you by Live Earth Products. To get to know a little more about Live Earth Products, we're talking on the phone today with Vice President Russell Taylor. What about humates in animal feed? When can you add humates to the animal feed, and what is the benefit of that?
So the interesting thing about animal feeds is just like the fertilizer side, there's actually a lot going on in legislative processes. So there's an act out called the Innovative Feed Act. And currently, you can't include things in animal feed that are giving you other benefits besides nutritive benefits. Let's say, for example, you had a cow that was eating a product that reduced its methane emissions, those enteric gases that are caused just in the natural digestion of a ruminating cow. You can't claim that those products do that benefit. So hopefully people will get involved and say, look, the Innovative Feed Act is necessary and should help farmers. Other benefits of feeding humate is obviously first to reduce enteric gases. But the second one, these are old plant materials. So those plant materials are rich in trace minerals. So not only are you getting something that's going to help the digestion of the animal, you're also getting an abundant supply of minerals. So that is the main reason farmers are currently including in their animal feeds.
This is all fascinating, but it can be hard to retain some of this information when you're hearing this on the radio or through the podcast. So is there someplace online, or where can our listeners go and get more information?
Well, the good news is the acts I mentioned, like the Innovative Feed Act and the Plant Biostimulant Act, are publicly available through Congress. You can actually go look at those acts. They're on the website there. The other information you can get is directly through Live Earth Products. So if you go to liveearth.com, contact us. You can contact us and our agronomy team. And we're happy to go over any details, questions about how to use these products, how they fit your farm program, how to use them as a tool to implement conservation practices such as nutrient retention, water conservation, and improving soil health.
To get to know more about Live Earth Products, you can visit them online at liveearth.com. That is spelled LIVEARTH.com. Did you know that a set of days are set aside each year by federal day-use park operators, like the U.S. Forest Service, to waive fees such as parking for the day? Here's Rod Bain with details.
National Public Lands Day is always the fourth Saturday in September, September 28th for this year. But in addition to that,
it is designed to be a fee-free day. So it allows everyone to show up to our public lands, whether national forests or national parks or any other public lands, wildlife refuges, and help out with these projects.
Alice Cohen of the U.S. Forest Service explains, during certain days of the year designated as fee-free days, day-use fees are waived.
At a day-use site, which might be a picnic area or a boat launch, you might have a parking fee of $2 or $6, or it really depends on the site. Or you might have other fees for day-use areas.
Day-use facilities include those under federal management and oversight by entities such as the Forest Service,
National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, Army Corps of Engineers, and even U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service honor the fee-free days.
Several of the fee-free days are common among the various federal agencies. usually federal holidays. In addition to National Public Lands Day,
Martin Luther King Jr. Day. June 19th is Juneteenth. That's a fee-free day. And Veterans Day is a fee-free day on November 11th.
the U.S. Forest Service has a total of 5 fee-free days, which also includes National Get Outdoors Day. And Cohen adds some of the federal agencies participating in day-use park fee-free days may also extend this service on additional days as well.
The agencies might recognize when they started. So Army Corps of Engineer, June 16th is their birthday, and that sort of thing. So it can be a variety of different events and different fee-free days. Oftentimes the fee-free day may be just a normal day at that site. You don't pay to get in.
The websites for participating federal agencies will contain calendar year dates for fee-free days at day-use parks, including the Forest Service website at www.fs.usda.gov. Another online resource to find federal day-use park fee-free day information is the National Environmental Education Foundation via its website, www.neefusa.org. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This is the AgNet News Hour. We will be back in just a moment with more agriculture news. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halverson. We are talking with author Christopher Brown, who wrote about his experiences with wild spaces.
I'm Christopher Brown. I'm the author of A Natural History of Empty Lots, field notes from urban edgelands, back alleys, and other wild urban places.
So to start us off, tell my listeners just a little bit about your book and what they can expect when they read this.
A Natural History of Empty Lots is a book that, on the one hand, is basically my sort of record of the 20 plus years I've spent exploring the kinds of wild spaces and wildlife that exists in the city and a little bit in the country as well. In terms of the sort of the form of the book, it's a mix, the kinds of things you would think of if I talked to you about nature writing, of some of the kinds of things that you might think about if I talked to you about memoir, and then literary nonfiction or narrative nonfiction, where you're trying to share information that may be actionable to the reader or interesting to the reader, but is presented in an engaging form. It covers both, like, how do you find these kinds of wild spaces in the city? How do you learn to have encounters with wildlife? How do you experience wild plants, native or non? And then about our experience of rewilding domestic life, of restoring a little urban acre to something more like the prairie that once was here. And then what those kinds of experiences teach us about how we might, have more effective futures as communities and even on a planetary basis.
So I find this interesting on several different levels. First off, being a person I work in agriculture reporting, and so I report a lot on agriculture and the need to get more plants in the ground, if nothing else, than to have pollinators, which rewilding some of these spaces absolutely would do. Let me start off with this. Was there anything that you were surprised to discover as you were writing your book?
Yeah, I was really interested in what it taught me about things I already thought I was so authoritative on when I set out to write the book, about how to think about our relationship with the land and what that has to do with all of the other things in our lives. And when you write a work of nonfiction, you write a book proposal, the 10 to 20 page pitch of what the book's going to be, and then you write a few sample chapters. And I thought I had a pretty clear idea of what I was doing, but then I figured out that, to really pull this all together, I need to have a kind of story type. And I got to thinking about, as I was working on it, and so I was like, okay, I'm struggling a little bit. What am I going to do? I got to thinking about a kind of story that we've all read, we've all been raised around, we've deeply internalized, but we don't give a lot of thought to. And those are the sort of stories about the colonization and settlement of the American continent, at least for those of us who live in North America. The kind of stories we all hear around the dinner table, or the Thanksgiving dinner table, or Easter dinner table, or whatever other holiday you may celebrate as a family, about where we came from, why we left, how we got here, what we found here, how we changed it, and how it changed us. And thinking about those stories and how deeply they are connected with our relationship with the land and with the plant life and the animal life around us and what it gives us, and how we can interrogate those kinds of stories and how we take them at face value to maybe think about in fresh ways about how we approach things like how we live off the land, if that makes any sense and isn't too esoteric.
It makes perfect sense. And I have not had a chance to read your book. I believe I do have a copy of it, but I just haven't had the opportunity yet to actually sit down and read it. But I'm very interested in the topic and the idea of transforming empty lots. I have to say, you mentioned that you're a lawyer. How do these two come together?
A lot of lawyers are also writers. It's one of those fields that's suited to people who like to manipulate language. Lawyers are supposed to always be telling the truth, so they shouldn't be people who are making up stories and writing novels, but that's what I ended up doing. And what we do, it's very much about the manipulation of language on a daily basis. And as a lawyer, you become deeply conversant with the legal doctrines that kind of frame our relationship with the land, with our relationship with nature, with our conceptions of property, the kind of deep roots of the ideas of how is it that one person rather than another, or one community of people rather than another, is entitled to occupy and take advantage of the opportunities that the land provides, or have exclusive control over, say, another living being, an animal, right? And how all of that stuff works. And I grew up in the Corn Belt. I grew up in a tremendously agricultural landscape. I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, and spent a lot of my childhood doing summer work in fields or in town. And I was interested in growing up in an intensely agricultural landscape led me to seek out more wild nature in the city, because I always found when I went out to the countryside that the techniques of production agriculture had a diminishing impact on the biodiversity around, and so that you found more wildlife encounters like in the woods by the river in town than you did in the country. And those sorts of experiences as a kid really led me to have an interest in continuing to do that as an adult. And that sort of led to the genesis of this book, which is about, how wildlife actually counterintuitively is finding home in the city and in the sort of human impacted landscape in ways that are very surprising. And then when you experience it, it can give you a kind of fresh perspective on your own life.
You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. We continue now with author Christopher Brown. So from your life, either while researching the book or just your life, since it seems like this is something you really pay attention to, do you have a special story or something that really touched you in one of your experiences with the finding wildlife making its way through the city?
Yeah, there's three I can think of. One was the onset of adulthood. I had like my first encounter with a coyote, and this was in the countryside, and just like on a winter field on an old bottomland cornfield that somebody had tried to turn back into a wetland. It probably had once been a wetland, right? And then it was good and fertile, and somebody had grown corn there for many, or multiple people probably for many years, and then somebody had bulldozed it back into a dam to turn it back into a wetland, probably a duck hunter. And it was iced over in the middle of winter, and I was out for a walk alone, and I saw this weird shape coming across the ice. It almost looked like just like a shimmer, almost like a trick of the light. And I realized in time that it was a coyote, and saw how it's in that moment, how the silver in its coat did that trick of the light. And you could, and then as it approached me, I could see how it registered an evident hunger and felt that first experience of encountering a wild predator out in the woods. And learning how those immediate personal experiences of other species teach you things that books cannot. And then flash forward years later, in the middle of the city, out walking with my son at the edge of downtown Austin, Texas, where I now live, and seeing another coyote, not in a field, but walking down, crossing the railroad tracks by a quiet street on a Sunday morning, and learning when I researched it further that coyotes have rapidly moved into the interstices of American cities in a way that it used to be when I was a kid in the 70s. You'd often find stray dogs, and now it's coyotes, and they're not scavenging, but they're hunting. They're like hunting the the rodents and other small animals that live off our trash, but they're not living off our trash directly themselves. And then the last sort of anecdote I'll share is just remembering the simple all-American experience like mowing the lawn for my dad as a kid in a lot that we had moved into that was like the one I'm on now, where it was at the end of a dead-end road or cul-de-sac and at the edge of some urban woods. And realizing sometimes you're mowing the lawn and you hear that knock and you realize that you've hit something. And when I looked down to see what I had hit, I realized that I had exposed the den of some bunny rabbits. And there's 3 little baby bunnies sitting there whose lives I had probably extinguished by destroying their home and my obliviousness to their presence, right? And I was probably 12 or 13 years old at the time, so maybe not super culpable. But that little micro lesson really taught me a lot about how to try to be more attentive to what's hiding in plain sight around us in the natural fabric of what we call the city, but really is part of nature itself.
And are these like the stories that led to you writing this book?
Yeah, those experiences of writing coyotes are really what led me to write this book. And that experience as a kid is when about the bunnies is when I rediscovered what, as I was writing the book. And because what I found, I started one just as my sort of thing to do for fun, both with my son when he was a little Cub Scout. And I was like, why are we driving 2 hours to the camp out when we can just go find some wild space, walk right out the back door and see what we can find down in this creek bed or whatever, or in these sort of dirty urban woods, and finding all manner of wonder. So I started doing that with him and then alone. And that led to me wondering if it might be possible to build a house on such a place or to make a home in those kinds of spaces, and finding a brownfield lot that was basically the classic empty lot in a kind of rundown part of town bisected by an old petroleum pipeline. And figuring out how to get the oil company to take the pipeline out, which had already been abandoned a few years earlier, and then build a little house in there. And as I moved into that space, I learned I got a better sense of all the wildlife that was living around me, that had been living there before I got there. And when you have those little experiences, there's this little family of foxes there right outside your back door on that other lot that's about to be developed for a little office building or whatever. It's easy to get invested in the idea that you have some kind of duty to protect this other life that's there. Well, at the same time, you have to be a realist about it and figure out ways to balance nature's needs with humanity's needs. But things like that, about like the bunny story, or sort of that idea of being mindful of your own myopia or potential to be negligent about sort of wasting other life, is something that really, I think, emotionally charges the book, even though that story doesn't appear in the book.
And for our listeners, once again, can you give us the book title?
My book is A Natural History of Empty Lots. Field notes from urban edgelands, back alleys, and other wild urban places.
And that's available any place that you can buy books. For listeners who would like to know more about you, are you online?
Yeah, they can find me at christopherbrown.com, as well as links to all my social media feeds and my newsletter, where I write weekly about walks in the urban woods and other related topics about the lessons it teaches us about how to think about nature and the 21st century landscape.
All right. Is there anything else that you think that our listeners should know?
No, I think one of the lessons of this book is a simple one, that if you are looking for something interesting to do to change the way you see the world, try to step outside and figure out a way to get lost in a place you think you already know, and alter your regular path. Try to look at things that you don't normally pay attention to, whether it's the bug on the flower near your path, or walk down into the part of your neighborhood that you've never seen, or step off the pavement, and you might be amazed what you find.
That's perfect. And that's fantastic advice.
Thank you.
All right. I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm sure you've got a lot going on.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. I really appreciate it.
Thank you again to Christopher Brown for sharing his book and his story with us. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halverson. Thank you so much for sharing your morning with us.